Ficamos agora com a Zoe Kostantopoulos, do Plano B.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for the honoring invitation to be here among you tonight at this opening of your 10th Congress at this internationalist session. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here tonight, and it's an even bigger honor and an even bigger pleasure because today is a historic day. Less than a year has passed since the 5th of July 2015, when the Greek people said a historic and glorious no to the extortions addressed to them by the European Union organs and institutions and claimed their right to democracy, to freedom, to self-determination, to dignity. And I feel very proud of the Greek people, as I feel very proud for each people who claim their rights and their content of their lives and of their future. In less than a year, 2 different referenda defied the tyrannic, authoritarian, totalitarian ways of the European institutions and of the European Union. And they proved what a lot of interests would like not to be proven, namely that it's the people who hold the power. It's the people who have the power. It's the people who are more courageous than their leaderships, and it's the people who have the strength to rise up and stand up for their rights. And it's these people we're defending, and it's these people that we are all about. Last year, there was a coup against the Greek people by the European Commission and the European Central Bank, who used the denial of liquidity as a tool to subordinate a sovereign country against the will of its people. They used extortion, they used threats, they used banks closure, they used capital controls, they used media propaganda, and yet they were unable to manipulate the people. They were unable to prevent the 62% no vote of the 5th of July of 2015. And what they were unable to achieve, the Greek government, or part of it, undertook to finish. So the other half of the story about the coup, which happened last year, the coup by the European institutions and the IMF, is that the rest of the dirty job is still carried out by the Tsipras government. And what is the most problematic aspect of this situation is that this part of the coup is fraudulently carried out in the name of the left. In the name of the left, while it has nothing to do with the left, in the name of the left, while it represents and incarnates the most neoliberal, anti-social, extremely authoritarian and anti-democratic policies ever implemented in Greece after the dictatorship. But I was called here to talk to you about Plan B, so let me go back to the roots of how Plan B was conceived. Because Plan B was an initiative taken right at the time when the Tsipras government had passed through Parliament the third memorandum against the referendum outcome, against the will of the people, against the positions of his party, against the resistance of a lot of us who were members of the Parliament and myself as President of Parliament. And right after passing the third memorandum, the Tsipras government, in collaboration with the creditors, decided to dismantle the Parliament, because that Parliament was an annoying Parliament. That Parliament had created the Debt Truth Committee, a committee which showed that the Greek debt was illegitimate, it was illegal, it was unsustainable, it was odious, it therefore could not and should not be paid. And I want to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly thank Eric Toussaint, who wholeheartedly himself undertook the role of the scientific coordination, of the scientific coordinator of the Debt Truth Committee, the only debt auditing committee established at a national level, at an institutional level in Europe so far. This was an annoying parliament and it had to be dismantled, and it also had to be dismantled under the pretext that there is no alternative, that subordination is the only choice, that you need to surrender in order to survive. These were the mota of the Tsipras government and the Tsipras resignation. And right then, 5 people around Europe, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, Oscar Lafontaine, Stefano Fassina, Yanis Varoufakis, and myself, signed a call for an international meeting, a call for an international platform, a European platform, to prove that there is, of course, not just one, but several alternatives. That surrendering democracy, surrendering social rights, surrendering people's rights, surrendering parliamentary functions can never be an alternative for the left. It can never be an alternative for any democratic force in Europe. To prove that what happened in Greece was a blunt and clear violation of democracy and of the country's constitution, and what is more, it was the total resignation of any claim for democracy within the European Union. Ever since September, we have met several times. We met in November in Paris, where our meeting was postponed due to the murderous attacks in the city. We met in the end of January in Paris, and then in the end of February in Madrid. We are discussing not just alternatives, but specific schemes, specific plans, specific defenses against the attack which is led by European institutions against the European people. The initiative for a Plan B represents our democratic rights, but also our democratic duty to resist against the totalitarian practices of EU organs against European societies and European people. It represents our right and duty to defend ourselves, to defend our people, to defend democracy, to defend our common acquis, but also to defend our future against all authoritarian, neo-authoritarian attempts. To defend the European societies from the use of state debt as an instrument of imposition and subordination, and to establish and recognize debt audits and debt auditing procedures not just as an obligation of governments, as they already are, but also, and most of all, and above all, as a sovereign democratic right of the people, a right to know how the debt that is used against them was created and inflated, a right to refuse to pay a debt which is not their own, a right to refuse to victimize the young generations and the next generations in the name of a debt which was never created by those generations. You know, in Greece, every baby that is born right now owes 41,000 euros. And this can never be conceived as any kind of justice. It can never be conceived as a fact with which we can live. It can never be conceived as part of a policy, even less part of a policy of a government which pretends to act in the name of the left. Let me tell you what the situation is now in Greece. Unemployment has reached sky-high levels. It's 70%, 72% among young women and 60% among young men, and still job cuts are being performed. The public property is being sold out at ridiculous prices. The most precious parts of public infrastructure, public enterprises, airports, ports, everything is being given away, not even sold. Cuts have been passed through legislation of hundreds of pages voted upon in a few hours in Parliament. Just a month ago, there was a law of 7,500 pages passed in less than 2 days, privatizing everything that was left with respect to public property, but also immunizing some ministers with offshore companies' participation. This is what has been happening in Greece. Are the Greek people defenseless? Are the European people defenseless? No, they're not. And today's referendum showed that we're not defenseless, and last year's referendum showed that we're not defenseless. And these referenda are very strong tools in the hands of the people, in the hands of societies, in the hands of the forces of the left, in the hands of the social movements, in the hands of the radical political forces in Europe. As I like to say, there are three tools for the Greek people, but also for the European people. Tool number one, the Dead Truth Committee report of last year, this report. It's actually banished by the new Parliament president, and what has been left of its copies are locked away because they don't want them distributed. Of course, the Dead Truth Committee will continue its work and will continue the auditing by transforming itself to an association. This was a decision that we recently took in Brussels last spring. The second tool is the referendum outcome, because the referendum outcome delegitimizes everything that has happened in Greece at a legislation and executive level ever since last July. And the third tool is the constitutional right and duty, the democratic right and duty for the people to defend themselves, to defend democracy, to disobey undemocratic attacks on the Constitution, to resist against any violation of the Constitution. There's a fourth tool, and this is the one I will conclude my speech with. This fourth tool is solidarity, your solidarity. What last year's coup was plotted against was not only the people, it was the morale around societies, around social movements, around political forces in Europe. It was the morale of the people. It was their optimism. It was their self-generation to fight. We in Greece are ready to fight again. The people in Greece are rising up again. They're rising up to fight, to defend public spaces, to defend people's rights, to defend people's homes, to defend people's hopes, to defend people's dignity. One comrade said to me, "We're in a difficult situation." Indeed, but the left, the social movements, the radical movements are meant to fight against difficult situations. We're meant to overcome difficulties, and we're meant to prove that the people are stronger than the markets, that the people are braver than the bankers, and that they're better than the bureaucrats. Thank you very much.